Pamela Smart. The story starts with what seemed like a simple, tragic crime, a home invasion gone wrong. But the truth was far more sinister. Pamela Smart was a high school media coordinator who plotted the murder of her own husband, Gregory Smart, back in 1990. And she didn't do it alone. Pamela was born in Florida in 1967. She was known for being smart and incredibly ambitious. She met Gregory Smart in college, and they got married in 1989. After moving to New Hampshire, she took a job at a local high school. It was there that she met 15-year-old William Flynn, and it was there that their affair began.
But this wasn't just a forbidden romance. In 1990, Pamela convinced Flynn that her husband had to die so they could collect his life insurance. On May 1st, 1990, Flynn and two of his friends broke into the Smarts' home. Flynn pointed a gun at Gregory's head and pulled the trigger. At first, everyone thought it was a random robbery, but Pamela's strange behavior after the murder and the inconsistencies in her story made the police look closer. Pamela Smart was arrested and tried for first-degree murder, conspiracy, and witness tampering. In 1991, a jury found her guilty. The sentence? Life in prison with no possibility of parole. For decades, she denied everything. But then, in a stunning turn in June 2024, as part of a plea for a reduced sentence, she finally admitted her full responsibility for her husband's death. This case is a chilling look at how manipulation and greed can twist a person, leading them to commit the ultimate betrayal.
I found myself responsible for something I desperately didn't want to be responsible for.
Case 2. Nixeliz Santiago. This case is not about a woman who killed with her own hands, but one whose inaction led to the death of her own child. Nixeliz Santiago was convicted of manslaughter for failing to protect her 7-year-old daughter, Nix Mary Brown, from being beaten to death in their Brooklyn apartment in 2006. We don't know much about Nixeliz's early life. We know she lived in Brooklyn with her partner, Cesar Rodriguez, who was Nix Mary's stepfather. Their home life was a nightmare of abuse and turmoil that would ultimately end in an unthinkable tragedy. In January 2006, 7-year-old Nix Mary was brutally tortured by her stepfather, Cesar Rodriguez, supposedly for disciplinary reasons. He beat her and abused her in the most horrific ways. But all while this was happening, her mother, Nixeliz, did nothing. She didn't step in to stop the abuse, and she didn't call for the medical help that could have saved her daughter's life. Nix Mary died from her injuries. The case sparked a massive public outrage and led to major reforms in New York's Child Protective Services. In 2008, Nixeliz Santiago was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to a long prison term. The death of Nix Mary Brown was a heartbreaking tragedy that revealed deep cracks in the system designed to protect children. It's a terrible reminder that sometimes the biggest threat to a child can be the very person who is supposed to protect them.
Because what it says in no uncertain terms, children are owed a duty. Parents, you have a duty to your children. And your duty is as simple as protecting them.
Case 3. Lacy Spears. On the surface, Lacy Spears was a hero. A doting single mother who documented her son Garnett's mysterious illnesses on social media, earning sympathy and praise for her devotion. But behind the screen, she was a monster. In 2014, Lacy was convicted of poisoning her 5-year-old son to death with salt. Lacy was from Alabama, and she built an entire online persona around being the mother of a sick child. She claimed Garnett suffered from a long list of illnesses, posting constant updates about his hospital visits. The reality, however, was that Garnett wasn't sick at all. Lacy was making it all up. In January 2014, 5-year-old Garnett was rushed to the hospital with fatally high sodium levels in his body. Investigators were stumped until they uncovered the horrifying truth. Lacy had been secretly force-feeding her son lethal doses of salt through his feeding tube. This is a classic and deadly case of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where a caregiver intentionally makes someone sick to get attention. In 2015, Lacy Spears was convicted of second-degree murder. Her sentence was 20 years to life in prison. She won't be eligible for parole until 2035. The murder of Garnett Spears is a deeply disturbing look at the dark side of maternal instinct, a story where a mother's need for attention was more powerful than her love for her child.
I lost my 5-year-old son, and I'm very saddened that I'll never get to watch him grow up.
How did your son die?
His death certificate says homicide.
Case 4. Yoselen Ortega. For the Krim family, Yoselen Ortega was a trusted nanny, someone they brought into their home to care for their most precious treasures, their children. But in 2012, she turned their Manhattan home into a slaughterhouse, murdering 6-year-old Lucia and 2-year-old Leo. Ortega was an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. To the Krims, she seemed like a reliable and calm nanny. Behind this facade, however, she was battling severe mental health issues and financial trouble, a storm brewing that no one saw coming. On October 25, 2012, the children's mother, Marina Krim, came home to a scene of unimaginable horror. Ortega had taken the children into the bathroom and stabbed them to death with kitchen knives. She then tried, and failed, to kill herself. At her trial, Ortega claimed she was legally insane, that voices had told her to do it. But the jury didn't buy it. In 2018, Yoselen Ortega was found guilty of first- and second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without any chance of parole. The Krim murders were a senseless tragedy that shook New York City to its core. It's a terrifying story that makes you question how well you can ever truly know the people you let into your life.
It's a tragedy, and I feel so terrible for this family. Horrible, horrible tragedy.
Case 5. Narcy Novak. This is a story of glamour, wealth, and deadly greed. Narcy Novak, a former stripper, was convicted in 2009 for orchestrating the brutal murders of her husband, hotel heir Ben Novak Jr., and her 86-year-old mother-in-law, Bernice Novak. Narcy's real name was Narcisa Feliz Pacheco. She married into a life of luxury when she wed Ben Novak Jr., the heir to the famous Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami. But their marriage was anything but a fairy tale. It was filled with cheating, lies, and constant fights over money. The violence erupted in April 2009. Bernice Novak's mother, Bernice, was found bludgeoned to death with a wrench in the garage of her Florida home. It was shocking, but it was only the beginning. Just 3 months later, Ben Novak Jr. was found in a hotel room in New York. He had been tied up, his eyes gouged out, and beaten to death. The investigation revealed a shocking plot. Narcy and her own brother had hired hitmen to kill both Bernice and Ben, all so they could get their hands on the family's multi-million-dollar fortune. In 2012, both Narcy and her brother were found guilty of orchestrating the murders. They were sentenced to life in prison. The Novak case is a dark and twisted tale of how the hunger for money can drive people to destroy their own family in the most brutal way imaginable.
I realized that he was on the floor and it did not look like Ben. Ben won't be on the floor.
Case 6. Hayand Deng. A heated argument, a fatal decision, and a cross-country run from the law. In 2021, Hayand Deng shot and killed a man in her Queens apartment, a man she was in a relationship with. Deng was born around 1990 and lived a quiet life in Flushing, New York. We don't know much about her past, only that she was involved with the victim, a man named Justin Lee. In September 2021, inside her own apartment, Deng shot Justin Lee, killing him. But she didn't call the police. Instead, she grabbed the keys to his car and fled. She drove all the way from New York to New Mexico, trying to escape what she had done. It was there that state troopers finally caught up with her and brought her back to face justice. In 2024, Hayand Deng was sentenced to 27 years in prison for manslaughter and robbery. This case is a stark reminder of how quickly a moment of rage can escalate into an irreversible tragedy. A life was lost and another was ruined, all because of one violent, impulsive act.
As she's cold and tries to go back to her car, but the officer, not knowing what was inside, tries to detain her instead.
Just for right now, let me see if your hands. Let me see your hand.
What?
So I'm going to just detain you for a little bit until I figure out what's in your car.
What?
Stop moving.
Help me.
A good Samaritan driving by saw the altercation and stopped to help.
I just need to get her hands.
Help me.
Get on your belly.
And police ended up finding a revolver in a backpack on the passenger floorboard. Deng is charged with resisting arrest here and is awaiting extradition back to New York to face the murder charge.
Case 7. Shauning Jeang. What happens when a client feels betrayed by their lawyer? For Shauning Jeang, the answer was murder. In 2022, she walked into her immigration lawyer's office in Flushing, New York, and stabbed him to death. Jeang was a young woman, born around 1997. She had hired a lawyer named Jim Lee to help her with her asylum application. But when things didn't go her way, her frustration turned into deadly rage. In March 2022, Jim Lee dropped Jeang as a client, telling her he couldn't represent her because she had lied on her application. This was the trigger. Jeang went to his office armed with 2 kitchen knives. She attacked both Lee and his assistant. Jim Lee, a respected lawyer and community advocate, died from his wounds. In 2024, a jury convicted Shauning Jeang of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 27 years to life behind bars. The murder of Jim Lee was a shocking act of violence, a brutal outcome born from a sense of desperation and uncontrollable anger. It's a tragic story about how a professional disagreement ended in bloodshed.
Lenia Ishmile. This is one of the most heartbreaking cases of all. A 6-year-old girl, murdered allegedly by the one person who should have protected her above all others, her own mother. In 2023, Lenia Ishmile was arrested for the murder of her daughter, Jalaiah, in their Bronx apartment. Lenia was born around 1996 and lived in the Bronx with her daughter. But something inside their home was terribly wrong. In May 2023, little Jalaiah was found dead. An autopsy revealed the cause was child abuse. She'd been beaten, suffering blows to her head and her chest. But the story gets even more disturbing. Investigators discovered that New York City's Child Protective Services, the ACS, already had a file on the family. They'd been investigated before. This revelation led to widespread criticism and raised serious questions about whether the system had failed this little girl. Lenia Ishmile has been charged with second-degree murder and is now awaiting her trial. The death of a 6-year-old child is an absolute tragedy, but when the killer is the child's own mother, it's a crime that shakes you to your core.
She was just so sweet, like, always wanted to give me a hug, show me love, give me affection, like, those things I'll never forget.
Case 9. Veronica Serella. A mother calls 911 in a panic. Her 8-year-old daughter is having a severe allergic reaction. But was it the truth? Or was it a cover for a crime? In 2015, Veronica Serella was convicted for the death of her daughter, Julie, a death that was no accident. Veronica Serella was a mother in New York who was reportedly struggling with her own personal problems. In 2015, her 8-year-old daughter, Julie, died in their home. Serella's story was that Julie had a fatal allergic reaction to peanuts. It seemed like a tragic but understandable accident. But when the medical examiner performed the autopsy, the story completely fell apart. The cause of death wasn't an allergic reaction. It was suffocation. There wasn't a single shred of evidence to support Serella's story. Faced with the science, she finally broke down and confessed to manslaughter. In 2017, Veronica Serella was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Julie's death was a preventable tragedy.
This case is a chilling reminder that parental neglect can be just as deadly as active violence. A mother's lie couldn't hide the truth of what she had done. We've walked through 9 stories of women who kill. Mothers, lovers, and caretakers who crossed a line from which there is no return. But it leaves us with unsettling questions. What truly drives a person to commit such horrific acts? How much of this is pure evil, and how much is a result of a broken system that fails to help those in desperate need? We have the verdicts and the prison sentences, but is there ever real justice for the innocent lives that were lost? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, how many more killers like these are living among us right now, hiding their true nature behind a mask of normalcy?